Joe Flacco is getting started. Shedeur Sanders took a seat. The most exciting rookie quarterback in the league is watching from the sidelines during the most anticipated game of the day. You could sense the change in atmosphere right away. The tailgaters' expressions changed from excitement to confusion as they checked their phones. Season ticket buyers asking anyone carrying Browns credentials to explain. The enthusiasm, hope, and sincere belief that Cleveland had finally acquired their franchise quarterback, which had been building for weeks, vanished like steam in the January air. This was more than just a change to the lineup. This stood for something much more destructive: violation of an unspoken agreement between the fan base and the organization. Since enjoying the build-up is necessary to comprehend the magnitude, let's set the scene. Brown's marketing apparatus worked non-stop for 3 weeks, pushing the generational quarterback duel between Sanders and Burrow. Football's future is represented by young phenomena. Sanders was prominently featured in every commercial package. His creative playmaking was highlighted in every social media campaign. The clash was constantly teased in every pregame show. For whole segments, the NFL Network examined Sanders' potential attacks on Cincinnati's aggressive defense. ESPN produced unique graphic packages. Sanders' movements were particularly tracked using special camera angles developed by Amazon Prime. This was no accident. When league execs spotted gold, they knew it. Sanders intended to increase revenue, interaction, and eyeballs. The story is ruthlessly told by the numbers. Several sources with first-hand knowledge of viewership statistics estimate that 18.2 million people watched the game in its first quarter. That figure had plummeted to 11.7 million at halftime. 9.3 million was barely maintained in the fourth quarter. For comparison, 22.4 million people watched the previous Browns vs. Bengals primetime game. We're talking about a 40% decline in viewing. During commercial breaks, network executives allegedly held emergency conference calls. Partners in advertising requested explanations. The calamity that was playing out in real time went beyond an ordinary ratings letdown to become a full-scale programming disaster. Don't take the connotations incorrectly. Millions in lost advertising income are represented by this. Streaming subscriptions could be terminated. Participants in fantasy football are leaving platforms. Sports betting handles are drastically declining. The repercussions spread throughout whole ecosystems centered around NFL consumption. Millions of viewers clearly don't care when Sanders doesn't play. That is the harsh truth. Stefanski's choice was made public. Present-day NFL viewership is becoming more and more reliant on narrative momentum, star power, and providing promised entertainment. Benchmarking Sanders was a simultaneous violation of all three principles. The atmosphere within the stadium changed from one of ecstatic anticipation to one of sulky resignation. Season ticket buyers who had paid top dollar to see Sanders make his primetime debut instead saw Joe Flacco's conservative play-action passes. The thunderous cheer that usually precedes the Browns' offensive plays turned into sporadic, halting cheers. Whole sections were empty by the third quarter. Disgruntled supporters crowded the concourses, preferring to vent their annoyances over watching the game. Sanders jerseys were being swapped, returned, or left unattended, according to merchandise stands. According to one dealer, it was Black Friday in reverse. Everyone is returning items rather than making purchases. Digital wildfire replaced social media. #Shedeur dominated the country's trending topics on Twitter within minutes after the news, not only in Ohio and Cleveland, but also across the country. In the first hour alone, the hashtag received almost 847,000 impressions. Before halftime, #Shedeur had amassed more than 623,000 usages, following closely behind. For a fan base that felt truly deceived, #Shedeur became the rallying cry. YouTube reactions, TikTok videos, and Instagram stories. Vibrant fan fury erupted on all platforms. The sentiment was nicely captured in one post that went viral. "I was just watching this game because of Shedeur. He was benched. I'm leaving." That one tweet became the unofficial hymn of fan protest after receiving 127,000 likes and 43,000 retweets. However, this is where things get more heated than they usually do in coaching disputes. According to league sources, the decision caught Sanders by surprise. Several insiders used words like shocked, disappointed, and fed up to characterize his response. The timing was especially painful because he'd finished his warm-up preparations and was mentally ready for his primetime presentation just an hour before kickoff. According to teammates, Sanders stormed toward the locker room while tossing his helmet, necessitating the intervention of a veteran to avoid a possible altercation with the coaching staff. The image of Sanders standing alone on the sidelines with his arms crossed and his helmet off became, rather than any real play, the game's distinguishing image. No one was satisfied with Stefanski's post-game explanation. He argued that the choice reflected matchup considerations and represented what provided the team the best chance to win, while defending the indefensible, while displaying fake confidence in front of the assembled media. The words sounded unreal. How do matchups suddenly change hours before kickoff? Reporters asked repeatedly. Why wasn't this mentioned sooner? What specific defensive appearances led to your most creative playmaker being benched? Stefanski used cliches that no one could believe, deflecting, rerouting, and eventually withdrawing behind the couch. His already tarnished reputation from the training camp scandals vanished entirely. Since that is where Stefanski's argument totally breaks down, let's look at real performance. 18 completions, 31 attempts, 186 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 3 sacks were Flacco's stat line. The offense scored 17 points, converted 4 of 13 downs, and produced 268 total yards. Cincinnati won 27-10, but Cleveland's garbage-time performance against the defense made the score look closer than it actually was. With a 39-year-old quarterback facing an aggressive pass rush behind a patchwork offensive line, the Browns' offense looked just like it should have, totally incapable of making spectacular plays that may have altered the course of the game, predictable and planning. Sanders, meanwhile, had spent 3 weeks outlining the exact reasons why ownership required his promotion. His preseason results: 67% of tasks were completed, 9.2 yards per try, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and numerous highlight reel plays that inspired the entire football community, not just Cleveland. Sanders reportedly routinely outperformed the first-team defense during practices, with plays that Flacco was no longer able to physically execute. The speed on intermediate routes, the ability to prolong plays, and the improvisational genius that turns broken plays into touchdowns. In private, each coach admitted that Sanders was their greatest chance for an offensive explosion. However, Joe Flacco was Stefanski's choice. Another explosive layer is provided by the dynamics in the dressing room. Several people inside the company claim that the choice shattered an already fragile ecosystem. After weeks of developing a rapport with Sanders, offensive players found themselves acclimating to Flacco's restrictions. Receivers who practiced particular rope concepts based on Sanders' arm strength ran in various patterns to account for Flacco's decreased speed. The offensive line, which was already having trouble with protection tactics, was put under more strain because they knew their quarterback was immobile. The team's defensive players, worn out from carrying its competitive dreams, watched as offensive ineptitude squandered their efforts. Veterans privately expressed confusion while publicly attempting diplomatic solutions. The team's defensive mainstay and undisputed leader, Myles Garrett, cautiously avoided giving out explicit approval for coaching choices while providing measured support. Returning from injury and eager to compete in the playoffs, Nick Chubb talked about having faith in the process while clenching his teeth. Younger players, especially those selected with Sanders, expressed their opinions on social media by liking tweets that attacked Stefanski, posting fan replies calling for Sanders to start, and leaving a clear digital trail of locker room animosity. This is what makes this situation so volatile: the dynamic of ownership. Jimmy Haslam had personally pushed for Sanders' inclusion, circumventing customary draft procedures to ensure his inclusion. The marketing division has spent millions to position Sanders as the cornerstone of the franchise. Sanders' star power was used to estimate income growth for the business operations. All of a sudden, Stefanski's arbitrary choice involved more than just benching a quarterback. He had questioned the financial estimates for corporate operations, marketing's promotional initiatives, and ownership's strategic vision. According to sources, Haslam was furious, demanding prompt explanations from football operations while watching viewership figures plummet in real time. The national response was similarly disastrous. Every prominent NFL commentator questioned Stefanski's judgment. It was referred to as coaching malpractice by former athletes.
Media figures that hardly ever concur on anything accomplished. There was broad agreement that Sanders' benching amounted to unfathomable self-defeating behavior. Colin Cowherd spent a whole segment discussing what he described as the most damaging coaching choice made in the contemporary age. Stephen A. Smith's response went viral right away. His look of disbelief as he yelled, "They benched Shedeur Sanders benching." Millions of people viewed Shedeur Sanders on various platforms. Simply put, Pat McAfee tweeted, "Brown's going to Brown," which somehow encapsulated the ridiculousness of the circumstance. The consequences of gaming gave the dispute a new angle. Because Sanders was anticipated to start, sportsbooks had set the Browns as the home favorite. His benching caused pandemonium for both bookies and bettors, causing enormous line shifts. After the lock, fantasy players wanted lineup modifications from DraftKings, causing customer service nightmares. FanDuel reported refunding some prop bets involving Sanders. The incident demonstrated how Sanders' presence had a profound impact on entire industries centered around NFL consumption as well as watching. It seems like nothing works correctly when he isn't playing. The elephant that is rampaging through Cleveland's facility needs to be addressed. This had nothing to do with football. Several sources attest that Stefanski's choice was based more on power relations than on a competitive analysis. The coach appears to have chosen this moment for a clear statement because he feels his authority is slipping due to ownership's draft intervention. Comparing Sanders to the ownership's obvious preference in front of
national audience during a primetime showcase was a calculated risk in order to establish coaching autonomy. However, the computation turned out to be wildly incorrect. Rather than exhibiting leadership, Stefanski showed petty behavior. He revealed insecurity rather than imposing power. He caused irreversible damage to the locker room rather than bringing it together. The viewpoint of the league official adds an intriguing complication. In order to promote young quarterback talent, Roger Goodell and his broadcast partners have made significant investments. Sanders served as the focal point of a marketing plan aimed at younger audiences. His benching may have harmed entire marketing campaigns rather than just one game. According to sources, several owners voiced their concerns to league offices about how Cleveland's choice might impact entertainment value and competitive integrity. In addition to sports, the NFL also sells stories. Without any prior notice or explanation, Stefanski had effectively canceled the most anticipated plot point for the season. Think about the wider ramifications of the timing. This happened during a pivotal period when the NFL faces off against college football conference titles, NBA opening week, and playoff baseball. The league needs high-profile games that promise to be entertaining. Millions of people switched channels, but instead, they got the Browns-Bengals with Joe Flacco throwing checkdowns. Sports media need to provide interesting content. Fantasy football requires statistical output. Competitive games are essential for sports betting. All three were given by Sanders. Nothing was able to fill the void left by his departure. The immediate following was just as disorderly. Coordinated PR catastrophes arrived Monday morning. Local radio hosts dealt with a never-ending stream of angry callers. Conflicting reports of locker room dynamics were released by beat reporters. National platforms examined every possibility in an attempt to explain the strange choice. Sanders himself was noticeably silent, and his lack of activity on social media speaks for itself. Strategic intelligence that suggested possible trade demands if things don't improve was released by his camp. Deion Sanders, his father, shared cryptic posts about understanding your value and identifying when you're unwanted. The Sanders brand protecting apparatus started to work against Cleveland's company. The reverberations kept growing within league circles. Other organizations started looking into trade options after realizing that Cleveland's dysfunction might present an unforeseen opportunity. Sanders' treatment was viewed by young quarterbacks across the league as a warning about organizational politics taking precedence over talent. Agents started adding clauses to contracts that shielded customers from comparable circumstances. According to reports, the NFLPA started investigating whether Stefanski's choice went against the rules of competitive integrity. What began as a coaching choice had turned into a league-wide dispute with ramifications that went beyond Cleveland. The Browns used a number of strategies to try to limit the damage. Unknown sources abruptly surfaced to support Stefanski's choice, pointing to never-before-mentioned practice issues. Articles concerning preserving coaching authority and avoiding excessive player empowerment were written by team-friendly media members. Sanders-related information was replaced by generic team-building messages on the organization's official social media accounts. It didn't work. The fan base had descended into chaos. There has been a 400% surge in requests for season ticket renewals. Merchandise sales fell. Concerns over brand association were voiced by corporate partners. The decline in viewership coincided with the financial bleeding. This goes beyond ordinary sports disputes to raise important issues regarding contemporary NFL economics. The league relies on engagement being driven by star power. Dynamic, youthful quarterbacks are priceless resources that bring in money well beyond their on-field accomplishments. Sanders was more than simply the quarterback for Cleveland. He generated engagement, drove narratives, and produced content. His benching exposed a risky discrepancy between traditional coaching methods and the demands of modern entertainment. It's possible that Stefanski prevailed in the battle for theoretical coaching authority, but lost the real battle for relevance, income, and fan loyalty. Going forward, it seems that without significant action, the situation cannot be saved. Organizational disruption is either unavoidable or Stefanski changes his mind and admits his error in appointing Sanders as a permanent starter. When viewership plummeted, the middle ground vanished. Ownership cannot overlook the financial consequences. Players cannot act as though there is unity in the locker room. Supporters cannot put up with coaching decisions that are veiled as competitive malpractice. Something has to give. Additionally, history indicates that when revenue streams are jeopardized, coaches are killed. The larger lesson applies to professional sports as a whole. Traditional player roles are no longer relevant for modern athletes. Their companies, entertainment vehicles, and brands power billion-dollar industries. Coaches who fail to acknowledge this fact risk going extinct. Stefanski's choice to bench Sanders may go down in history as the turning point for traditional coaching methods. Crushed under the combined weight of fan expectations and economic reality, stars are needed in the NFL. Entertainment is what fans want. Viewership is necessary for networks. All three are delivered by Sanders. That deadly clarity was demonstrated by his absence on Sunday night. Cleveland is experiencing an existential crisis as Monday night draws near, and there is no sign of a resolution. The team has to decide whether to back a coach whose choices appear to be becoming more and more erratic, or to embrace the quarterback who is a symbol of their future. The fan base has made up its mind already. Their conclusion was given by the viewership figures. Social media is still exploding. How long until ownership recognizes what everyone already knows is the only unanswered question. Sanders wasn't simply incorrect to be benched. It may have been the worst decision the Cleveland Browns have ever made. Additionally, given their past, that statement